Well, good morning, everybody. It's me, Mitch, and I'm sitting here in front of my computer editing a video I shot yesterday on my walk where I tried to make a point. Since I do these things unscripted, I wanted to make sure that I was able to make this point clearly and without having to take a half an hour to do it. So at this point, I decided that I would break into the editing and add clarification and comments so maybe you can understand a little bit more about how I think, because I'm convinced I don't think like most normal people think. I look at the world from a completely different lens and perspective. And I think that's what's allowed me to gain the insights that I've gained about the whys of virtually everything that has to do with how we react, why we react. At any rate, I can't explain it all in the introduction, but I hope I'll make my point by the end of this video, and I hope you'll watch the whole thing because I think that it might be valuable. So let's go. Let me start the video from the walk. Good morning, everybody. It's me, Mitch. I'm out here walking this morning. It's a beautiful, beautiful morning. Sun's shining. Rained a little earlier, but I think it's over. And I like to walk in the morning. Makes me feel good. Nice, brisk walk. When I make these videos, in fact, when I make all my videos, I start with a concept, but no script, no idea how I'm going to go from point A to point B. And in essence, teach everybody what I'm trying to in a logical way that just about anybody can follow. This subject that I wanted to talk about on my walk is so simple, yet seems incredibly hard to grasp for most people because most people don't think like I think. And the way I think has developed over my entire life. It is what motivated me to write my book 22 years ago. And nothing that I've written has changed. And my theories, my hypotheses on pretty much everything have only been reinforced in the last 22 years. So I'm going to start out and I'm going to try to state simply the basis for everything that I come up with in my crazy head. We're here. We're a species. We're alive today as human beings. And we got here through only one path. Now, that path might have been very complicated. That path might have had almost an infinite number of times when it could have completely changed course. But it didn't. And I tell people, and I think this way, when somebody says, how did it happen? How could it have happened? There's only one correct answer. One correct answer. It sounds stupid, unless you start to think about it, use your brain. It happened because that is the way it happened. It is what it is. Who really thinks about what that means? How did I get here? I'm here right now on my walk. I'm standing on a little wooden bridge over a fairly picturesque little canal. I'm going to stop here and clarify where I'm going with this. Everybody tells a story of how we got here. There are as many different versions of that story, I think, as there are human beings on this planet. Logic dictates that of all of those different versions and all of those different stories, only one of them can be true and real in every detail, down to the smallest detail. And I can say to myself, how did I get here? How many different answers to that question do you think there are? Correct answers. There's one correct answer. How did I get here? I know how I got here. I left my house. I walked down the street. I stopped and talked to my friends. I continued to walk. Step by step, instant by instant, things unfolded as they unfolded and not any differently than that. Every instant happened the way it happened, and a change in any one of those instants could have changed the course of the future of my walk, and I would not have ended up on that bridge. Our lives are like that. Our existence on this planet is like that. The very fact that we are here, now, alive, built the way we are, functioning the way we are, is the sum total of what happened every instant to every one of our ancestors, whether they were human or another species, right on back to that first single cell organism that is the grandparent of us all. Everything happened as it happened. We all know how much our own lives have changed just by the chance things that happen to us minute to minute. If I hadn't have been there at that time, that wouldn't have happened. That turned out to change the entire course of my life. So think about the dynamics of reality over the last, say, 4 billion years. Think of everything that's happened. Every event, every collision of every molecule with every other molecule. We humans don't have the normal capacity to think in numbers that large, but you have to. We also don't have the capacity to think in lengths of time that long. We think a lifetime is long, and we tend to frame our references and our versions of the story of how we got here in the terms of 100 or 200 years. And when we go back 10, 20, 50,000 years, we call that ancient history. That is the current instant in the overall scope of time that it took for everything that exists today to develop, and over that extremely long period of time. Could even stretch back to the beginning of the universe. Every single instant had an innumerable number of events, small and large, any one and all of them happening exactly as they happened, make up the only real, true story of why we're here and how we got here, and by extension, and more importantly, why things work the way they do. None of us can change that. That's history. We try to rewrite history to suit our agendas. We can't. History is history, instant by instant. an infinite number of things happening exactly as they happened, any one of which, had it been different, would have affected the final outcome of where we are today. Think about your own lives. Think about when you met your spouse. Think about what would have been different in your life if you didn't go to that place today, or even if you had gotten there a minute later, or if any one of an infinite number of other instances had happened any different than it had. That's the universal truth. It happened exactly the way that it happened. And that's the only story that's real. All the other stories are our fantasies and interpretations of reality. I live in reality. Everything I am has a story about how it got here. Every way we behave has its origin in necessary behaviors of our ancestors. Everything happened exactly. Everything happened exactly as it happened, instant by instant, or things would be different today. I use an example. 65 million years ago, an asteroid hit this planet, killed all the dinosaurs. What would have happened if that asteroid, it's just one little thing, missed the planet by 100 miles? These are big things, but there's something called the butterfly effect, and there's little things that change everything from that point on in future. But we try to manipulate too many things and bend reality to fit our new narratives. And of course, the one narrative that we're interested in, or affects us most, is diet and what you need to eat to be healthy. Now, we know from research that that narrative has been created. It's a story. It's not fact. Fact is how we got here. Fact is what happened over millions and millions and millions of years as we adapted to the diet that's right for us. But that doesn't fit the story. That doesn't fit the narrative. There's no reality anymore. Our entire reality is nothing more than somebody's narrative or story. It's not the story, it's a story. And if you were following me along, if you want to know what the story is, you'll realize that there is only one true story. There's a true story of how I got here that may be billions of years old, but there's only one way that everything or anything that happened during that period of time actually happened, and that's the story. All of our religions have created a story, and all their stories are different. How could that be? I'm hoping by now that you're beginning to understand how I think. I know that there is only one correct set of circumstances that took so long and had so many variables that happened exactly the way it happened, that is truly responsible for who we are and how we operate. How we operate is important when we try to figure out the perfect diet for this animal that we call ourselves human. And how do we know that when we think we've got the right diet, how do we know if it is the right diet? And in order to know this or anything else about where it came from, why it works the way it does, why it behaves the way it does, Why does the moth seek out the flame? Why does the deer run from the lion? Anything, no matter how insignificant or small, has a story of why it happened, and there is, regardless of what you want to believe, only one real and true story, a story in which we haven't discovered yet so many of what we call the missing pieces. But that doesn't mean because we haven't discovered them that they don't exist. They had to have exist. Something cannot come from nothing. There has to be one real, true story of the path of how it happened. Just as there has to be a story from this instant on of how the future will unfold, and it will unfold exactly as it unfolds, not the way we think we might want it to unfold. And 100 years from now, that billion-year-long story will have another chapter of the last 100 years that happened, how it happened. We have to have confidence in understanding why what we're doing is the right thing. We have to be able to pick out the flaws in all the other stories that we're bombarded with, day in and day out, from every direction, telling us what their version of reality is. Keep in mind at all times, there can only be one reality, and it is what it is. Discovering what it is the challenge. I hope this hasn't been too philosophical for you, but it's an important concept and something that drives me to search out this reality, to figure out where we came from, how we got here, what's the appropriate way for us to eat and live based on what it was that allowed our ancestors to survive for those hundreds and hundreds of thousands of generations of our ancestors who were successful, who did survive. Because how could you be here if that wasn't true? How could you be alive if every one of your ancestors, back as far as you care to imagine, hadn't lived, hadn't reproduced, and their offspring had lived and reproduced and lived and reproduced? Think about the odds of that happening hundreds of thousands of times with no interruptions, because any break in that chain and your heritage stopped. Just like many of you have kids, many of you don't. You don't have a kid, your heritage is over. The billions and billions of things that came before you that got you here are coming to an abrupt end in your generation. There will be no more generations. So think about that. If you're alive today, that means, even though those odds were so high and so incredible, you beat them. There's proof that you beat them. That proof is you're alive. You can't come up with any other story that could account for the fact that you're alive other than the story. So why do we keep trying to invent new realities when there is only one reality? And that reality is eat the food you're supposed to, take care of yourself, be healthy. Don't fall for this crap. Anything that exists, find the real place that it came from. How did it come? How did it come to be? Where did it come from? There's no magic, especially when it comes to living things. And that's, for want of a better phrase, the mind of Mitch. That's my quest in life. Find the real story. That's reality in a universe of people living in a fantasy, thinking that they can reshape that story into something that they find more pleasing. And that's where all of the bullshit in the world comes from, how it relates to what we're doing here, and what journey in my life brought me to YouTube around a year ago to try to inject some reality and common sense into this ludicrous, corrupt argument about what we should be eating to be healthy cannot be true if it doesn't fit in with that almost infinite number of things that happened that got us here. So when you listen to me talk and you listen to my advice, I want you to know that that's my frame of reference. A huge puzzle where every piece fits because it happened that way. It's why you cannot decide what our correct diet is without considering all of the prehistory of our planet, of the evolution of living things, of the molecule by molecule reactions that occurred every instant in the unimaginable length of time that it took for us to be here. You have to grasp the fact that every one of your ancestors lived and reproduced, or you wouldn't be here. It happened the way it happened, and we are the way we are. And none of it was ever guaranteed. It was only the result of an almost infinite number of random things happening over eons of time. Accept that. Start searching for things that fit in with what's real. Learn as much as you can of the story and stop listening to all of the stories that we humans keep inventing so that we can sell you our products, so that we can justify the things we want to do. Look at where we came from. In that are all the answers as to why we behave the way we behave. Why the moth is drawn to the flame, why the deer runs from the lion. It is fabulously complicated in scope, yet elegantly simple in concept. I hope in all of my videos, I project, if nothing else, that logical, rational, realistic thinking in supporting my positions and my opinions and my insights. Hope this hasn't bored you. I hope it gave you some insight into how this, what I call a crazy mind of mine, actually put this all together over a lifetime of discovery, accepting the things that fit rejecting the things that didn't. I know this was a lot. Maybe some of your brains are smoking and it's coming out of your ears. I'm passionate, as you can tell, about this. And hopefully, this will help you make the decision as to whether to take seriously anything this crazy old fart says, or just stop watching me and go somewhere else for your answers. This is where my answers come from. Mull that over while you take the rest of the day off, and for God's sake, don't forget to eat meat.